welcome to Unearthly Upstate. This is Mari.
And I am Matthew.
And we are starting another two-parter.
Yay!
This one we planned to do two-parter because as I was doing research for it, I just had so much to dig through.
Some episodes, inadvertently wind up two-parters, but this one we planned it that way because that's the scope of the subject is so wide. It's got a lot of information in it, and
it's about one family.
Yep,
it's about one family. This will, I guess, count as a true crime.
Yeah,
definitely.
It does definitely count as a true crime.
Definitely in the folklore, but there is folklore attached to this. But a lot of the stories that you hear about this subject are not folklore; they're true.
Although it may sound like folklore.
It may sound like folklore. It's not. We are going to discuss a gang that was very prevalent around the Civil War in Madison County, mainly. They did stretch out behind further than that. And it was called the Loomis Gang. And it all started with one family, the Loomis family. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to go back at the beginning of the 1800s, when George Washington Loomis moved to New York State. Now, George Washington Loomis was from Vermont. He must have had a good sum of money with him because he bought 385 acres of land in Madison County in the Sangerfield Township. And it was mainly in the swamp, which is now known as 9 Mile Swamp. Mm-hmm. There were rumors when he came from Vermont that he may have left Vermont under duress, I think is the best way to say it. Supposedly, he was stealing horses and reselling them and didn't want to get caught. So he moved to New York, and he buys those, nearly 400 acres of land, puts his house up on the highest part of that land. So he has a good view of what's going around. Now,
plus, you've got a house in a swamp, so you're going to pick the highest point of land on your property in order to build, to keep it from flooding.
Yep, and it overlooked the Chenango River. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the thing, Matt. We drove around, I think, that section of Madison County quite a bit when we lived out in that general area. Mm-hmm. That's very hilly to begin with. So picking the highest spot really gives you a nice view of the area. So he settles in the area, becomes a farmer, starts raising horses. Mm-hmm. At this point, nothing to put him on the radar, really. It's just this guy from Vermont shows up with some money, starts his life in Madison County. But he moves there, and his brothers follow him. And one of his brothers, named Willard, and a brother-in-law named Prentice were caught passing counterfeit bills. Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, that's a big deal. And it's kind of easy to pass counterfeit bills at that time. I was trying to find a nice Cliff Note explanation why, and this is my attempt.
Okay, let's hear it.
We had federal notes, but banks were allowed to issue their own notes.
Yeah, they were allowed to print their own money.
So what these counterfeiters would do is they would print their versions of banknotes for banks that were out of the area. So you couldn't just say, it didn't. You would know what the local bank notes look like, but you might not know what a bank looks like county over. So that's how they would do this. George either willingly, wittingly, or how do you say it? Knowingly or unknowingly passed a $10 bill to a Captain Leonard, but before he was brought up on charges on it, he paid Captain Leonard the real money, and basically the matter was dropped.
Okay. All right. Then.
But that was your first official brush with the law in New York. 1812 was a volatile year. We had the War of 1812.
Of course. Well, he got married, right?
Well, George, first he meets his love of his life. Mm-hmm. A woman named Rhonda Mallet. I'm pretty sure it's Mallet. They're French. It could be Mallet.
I don't think it's Mallet.
It's probably Mallet.
Probably,
She had an interesting family. Her father had moved to the area to avoid the wrath of Napoleon. He was a member of the French Revolutionary Army, and he stole money from them.
Yeah, embezzled money from the state.
So that's why he was in Madison County.
So you've got two sides of the family already that have a history of criminality.
Right.
So this all sets it up for the Loomis gang for sure.
So she's a school teacher. She's got a reputable, job at that time. Well, a sheriff comes to arrest her father. I forget what for. And George Loomis happened to be in the area. And he sees her beat the sheriff off, beat him back with a fire shovel. The sheriff asked George Loomis for help, and he says instead, I'm going to marry that woman, or I'm going to marry that girl. So, unfortunately, her father was convicted of perjury, and he was sent to state prison, which was the Greenwich State Prison, which is now was then known as Newgate. It's along the Hudson River. So this is pre-Auburn, so we don't have a tie to Auburn for the first time, I think, this season. Not to be confused
with the Newgate in England.
It was named after Newgate in England, but... So her father's sent to prison, and she marries George Loomis. And here we have the start of the dynasty. Now, you got to remember, George had rumors about him, why he moved to Madison. We know her father was up to no good.
For sure.
So we've got quite the like minds here. And between 1817 and 1836, the Loomis children are born. It was a very large family.
Yeah.
Huge family.
A lot of kids. They had 12 of them. But only a few survived.
Well, let's see. Harriet was the first. She died in 2 years. So she didn't survive. Then you had Castella, who did. She was born 2 years later. And she married a lawyer in Whitesboro.
William O'Merrill. Right?
Yeah, so she stayed in, Whitesboro's in Oneida County. Okay. Then he had William Walter, or Bill, and he married Martha Burdick, and he became a farmer. He kind of tried to stay out of what eventually becomes a family business, but he got pulled into it. Then there's Maria, and she was pretty much like her brothers that got into the family business. She was, I would say, she was a strong, they called her the outlaw queen. Apparently she did not marry. George Washington, Wash, he's going to be the big player. He becomes the leader of the gang. And he does meet no spoilers.
All right.
We had Lucia was then born. She married a Charles Edwards from Watervale, and she died during an epidemic at that time. Then there was Wheeler Theodore. He fathered 10 children, but had to escape to Canada to avoid rape charges. So, okay. We had Mary Charlotte, who married a businessman and moved to New York City. So she pretty much had nothing to do with him. Amos Plum, he was known as Plum. Yeah, he wasn't too...
considered to be worst?
Yeah.
Of the brood?
I was trying to think of a nice way to say it. But, yeah, he was the one that got dirty. Yeah. And then he had Hiram Deno. Literally, the quote I have on him, he was not quite right. And from what I read about him, he really just did not want to be involved with what the family's doing. He just wanted to be a farmer. But at some point in life, he became paralyzed. So he ended up with a really short straw of the family. I feel sorry for him.
That's for sure.
And their last child, Harriet, she also lived only 2 years. Okay. So,
one of the reasons why, folks, that people back then, well, people still do have large families, but one of the main reasons is child mortality. Pediatrics just wasn't to the level back then that it is now.
And free labor.
Of course, I was getting that.
Yeah, we're both from very large farm families. Yeah, so we know what that's like. We're both youngest of 7.
Both the youngest of 7. Yeah, exactly.
And actually, where we grew up, that was kind of a small family. Yeah. I had a classmate who was the youngest of 13, and one of my sisters married into a family of 14. So, yeah, the large families still existed way into the 1980s. So
yeah, we had
in the farm areas,
family friends from all over the region in northwest Wisconsin, and one of the families in Bloomer, Wisconsin, they had like 14 kids.
Yeah.
Big dairy farming families.
Yeah, because
as far as I know, they're still down there. Yeah.
Like I said, you got all the workers there, and as long as you can afford it, go for it. But yeah, we're both from large families. So actually, a family this size doesn't surprise me or Matt at all.
No.
But it was the family dynamic, because remember we had George Washington Loomis and his wife Rhonda.
Oh yeah.
And they started the whole thing.
Right.
And so, but when Wash, he was really, I would say, yeah, George and Rhonda started it. It was a lot of horse thieving. It was a lot of stealing neighbors' stuff, a lot of fencing going on. The horse stealing was the big thing. I mean, I'm a big Terry Pratchett fan, and one of the characters, Moise von Lidwig, actually talks about one of the things they would do. It was one of his crimes he would do, was he would buy an old horse. In this case, they would steal it, dye it, or color it up some way, and turn around and sell it at a higher price.
Right.
Now, the character would buy the horse outright and then turn around and sell it. These guys would just steal the horse and do the same thing.
Yeah.
But they weren't fools about the horses. No. Which one was it? It wasn't Wash. It was the other brother, the second in charge. He was a well-known horse breeder.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't just stealing horses. These guys knew their way around their livestock,
That's for sure.
I'm reading this going, oh, it was Grove. It was Grove who was the horse breeder.
Yes, Grove was the horse breeder.
I'm reading this going, if he was on the straight and narrow, he could have been made money off of these horses.
Yeah, for sure. One
of his horses had a stud fee of $6,000. This is Civil War money we're talking.
Oh, yeah. These are mid-1800s dollars we're talking about here.
A stud fee of $6,000.
Ouch.
I'm like, he could have been making it a hand over fist, but I really think his mother turned him away from the legit business of doing that.
Exactly. What famous horse?
Oh.
They actually, it's in the timeline here. Oh, yeah.
Flora Temple.
Yep. In 1845, Flora Temple was foaled from a sire, Bogus Hunter, as his name, which was the sire, and then that was Grove's horse, and the dame was named Madam Temple. So she was, the offspring was Flora Temple.
Yeah.
And it was bred by Samuel Welsh. He was the breeder that brought them together and did the work. This horse lived from 1845 to 1865 and was well known. She appeared in 112 events and won 95 of them.
Wow.
So, yeah, she lived to a ripe old age and died at the Erdenheim stud farm of Aristides Welsh in Philadelphia. She became a national favorite as a racehorse, and her dock tail inspired the famous folk song refrain, "Bet my money on a bob-tailed mare."
There you go.
So yeah, there's another historical connection.
Yeah.
Between horses and the Loomis family.
So then 1840s, Wash, like I said, kind of takes over with his dad's blessing. I think his dad was backing away from it. Mom was still very much involved with it. There's examples of, well, I'll go into it, but she really had control, really she did. So Wash has got the brains. He actually studied to be a lawyer at one point.
That's right, he did.
He always kept a good look. He was the type, this is so stereotypical, but you see some crime movies, Nat, you get that one criminal who's always in the good suits. He speaks very well, very highly educated. This was Wash.
Yeah, well,
this was him.
It's postulated that Wash went to school to study law to become a better criminal.
Yeah.
But I think he really did. He wanted to legitimately become a lawyer, get on the bar, and have a career.
Right.
As a lawyer. But it just didn't pan out.
But Mom, especially Mom.
I think
kind of pushed him in the criminal area. Mm-hmm. So his brain starts going, okay, how can I make this into a business? And that's where it grew. He actually, under his leadership, it went multi-state.
Yep.
They actually had to divide it into regions with certain people controlling the regions.
North, east, south, and...
So you're talking almost like a mafia family situation here right now.
Yeah, it was...
right. Like,
it was like that.
The northern region was overseen by Bill Loomis, and largely consisted of horse theft, which they would steal the horses and then sell them in Canada. The southern region was headed by Grove, who, again, horse thieving was a big thing. Yeah. The western region was ran by an associate named Bill Rockwood, and the eastern region was run by Wash. Now, Wash was really good at also getting the local politicians and even some of the state politicians on their side.
Wasn't he down there in Albany?
He was
with
down
his
in
money?
Yeah, he was
trying to bribe politicians.
Yes. Yep, he did that.
And police officials.
Yeah.
Tell them to go easy.
Oh,
on the Loomis family when it comes to their criminal activities.
So this was this is very, like I said, very mafia running right now.
Sure.
You could just see this as a Tarantino movie at this point. We haven't even got to the violent bits yet.
Type situation, or Fargo.
Oh, Fargo! Fargo would be a wonderful way to tell this story, actually. And we haven't even got to the violent bits yet. This is still horse thieving, counterfeiting.
That's what makes this a two-parter.
Burglaries. Okay, so far, we're not getting into the violent ends of it. But still, they were the ones, the Loomis family were the ones kind of oversaw that. But yet, they were very careful. They didn't try to steal from people that lived around them. If you did get on their good side, they would help you out. Uh-huh. One of my favorite stories of this is actually, they ended up helping the guy out because it was kind of their fault. He was a new neighbor of theirs, and he was having a really rough time getting his farm. And he was suffering financially. One of their underlings decided to take upon himself to steal this guy's horse. Probably the only horse he owned.
Start a horse thieving ring of their own, probably. Right. Delusions of grandeur.
Their neighbor goes to Wash and says, hey, you told me you'd help me out. Somebody took my horse. I'm desperate.
Wow.
So Wash goes, oh, don't worry, I'll see what I can do. He finds out one of his underlings did it, but the horse is already up in Canada and sold.
Oh, boy.
Wash spends $300 of his own money to get the guy a new horse.
And why did they take care of their neighbors?
Yeah, you take care of your neighbors. Who's a good alibi?
Yeah.
Who's going to speak up for you? Mm-hmm. Who's going to protect you when the cops come? I'm sure this guy was very grateful to get a $300 horse. And, hey, if Wash shows up like a month or two later and says, hey, I was at your house Saturday night, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was going to show up at your door sooner rather than later to return that favor. And that really marked Wash as the strategist and the tactical expert of the family, who had the kind of mind. His educators early on marked that. Mm-hmm. He was a fast learner.
Oh, he was very personable. He was good looking. And there's a lot of descriptions of how good looking he was, except later descriptions said he looked very much like John Wilkes Booth, but earlier descriptions were describing how handsome he was. It was
said of Wash Loomis that he could turn an enemy to a friend within 10 minutes of a conversation. Yeah, he was very influential.
And that worked too to bring people into the Loomis gang, and that included like how they would recruit the people in the area. They'd get some youths together, and invite them over. They get them drunk, party with them, whatever. And they always had the prettiest servant girls there. Mm-hmm. And I know you found that one horrible story.
Oh, talk about the servant girls. Yeah, they kept, let's face it, they kept servant girls as slaves.
Basically, yeah.
One had escaped. There's an account where one girl had escaped, presumably going berrying.
Berry picking, yeah.
Berry picking. And, she escaped into the neighboring county. Uh-huh. She didn't stop till she got out of...
Probably Madison.
Yeah, exactly. Where she knew she was out of the Loomis' clutches before she could finally stop at a household and relate what was happening to to her.
So they would
escape the Loomis gang.
So they'd use these pretty servant girls they had around the house. They would give them alcohol. They'd start partying with them, and then they'd start taking them out on little fun raids. And Rhonda would come out and say, "Hey, don't you come back. You better not come back empty-handed.
Kids would get it beaten.
Yeah.
If they came back empty-handed. Yeah. You got to steal something, a watch, a chicken, a dozen eggs, it don't matter.
The first couple times, it didn't matter. They could have gone and stolen an egg, and they'd be like, oh, you did a good job stealing eggs. So they were really good at, getting these people involved.
Bringing material wealth back to the family. And this was something that really the matriarch of the family instilled in her children.
So if you weren't directly doing the work with the gang, like those the people they got in there, like we said with their neighbors, they were either in their debt, like the guy who got the $300 horse, even though it was their family's fault, he lost the horse, or they were too scared to say anything.
Right.
Because Wash was really not the violent one. That was more of his other brothers. Plum and Grove were more the violent ones. But like I said, Grove could have had a great career just being breeding racehorses.
Exactly,
My God.
Yes.
But
up to the very end.
Yeah.
They had great horses.
Now, I'm not saying, they didn't have people who were speaking out against it. It's just sometimes these people ended up with mysterious fires in their farmland.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
About the Loomises, though. If you got into a dispute, it got around to the Loomis gang that you were talking, in negative terms, about the family, about over some kind of incident, some kind of deal, whatnot, or you suspect because something happened on your farm and something went missing in relation to the presence of one of the Loomis family.
Right.
And if you mention that to your neighbors or to local law enforcement, you might find your chicken coop burnt down or a barn.
But here's the thing. It wasn't always the Loomis family directly, the guys at the head of this criminal enterprise. It was the younger ones they would coerce into doing these acts.
Exactly.
They were the ones.
One of their operatives.
Yeah, they would be sent out to look out as lookouts while they went and stole stuff, and they were the ones that were burning down the barns, and they were the ones that were stealing the horses, and the family was sitting back up at the farm just collecting all that.
Locals would notice that when they were doing work late at night, something needed to be done around. We both grew up on farms, and we know that work never ends. It's 24/7. If something breaks down, you need to fix it. You need to get in there and take care of it. And one of these instances, one of their local farmers was working late at night under these circumstances. And they noticed strange men on horseback with a group of horses coming into the farm. And then days later, the same group of horses leaving. Late at night.
Well, what's interesting is
strange goings on, at odd hours.
This criminal enterprise, they did help people. Like mentioned that one farmer, they did help that one black former slave escape too. He had actually started working on their farm.
Well, I think they did positive things like this.
They did.
Not only to just secure the local silence, but also to cultivate this image of the Loomis family as successful farming and horse raising business.
I love the story that the black man that they rescued. I mean, he started working on there. He escaped from the South, and of course, getting close to the Civil War, you had a lot of Southerners coming up to try to reclaim the former slaves.
Oh yeah.
And this particular one, they were after him not only because he had been a former slave, but he'd helped the Loomises with some of their criminal activity. So the story goes that the people that came to get him were sitting out there waiting, and they noticed that two of the daughters leave with a black man, and this is like at midnight.
Yep.
It's no moon. It's dark. The girls are out there with a lantern and this black man. So they go to chase him because they think that these girls are taking this guy out. To the guy the fugitive looking for. They get up to the girls. They blow their lantern out.
Oh, right.
Well, by the time the guy gets it lit, the person who was chasing him, the constable, whoever it was, gets it lit, shines his lantern up. He realizes it's the wrong guy. Huh? Well, yeah, he was being taken out the back on some horses with the boys. They were miles away by now. So this just kind of gives you an example of...
Probably stolen horses that were...
Probably stolen horses. But that just gives you an example where, they were doing all this thieving and burning down and burglary and counterfeiting, but then they do something like that.
Yeah, bearing in efficient Wash Loomis was. He probably killed 2 birds with 1 stone like that.
Yeah. And then there's the famous incident at the dance.
Oh,
we have to talk about. This was in
Tell us about the dance.
September 1848. There's a county dance at Brookfield, and it's a big deal. This is one where all the everybody comes to go, right? So Grove and Wash bring their entourage with them, and they enter the ballroom. They were asked to pay tickets. They're like, no, we're not gonna pay. We're gonna start dancing. Now the one sister keeps excusing herself and going to the cloakroom. All right, keep this in mind. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the guys are getting kind of rowdy, and a fight breaks out. It's a real, those big saloon-type fights where everybody's fighting each other. Can you picture that in your head? You know what I mean? And like I said, the one sister kept going into the cloakroom. Well, the fight is starting. Some of these women are like, oh, I'm getting out of here. This is getting too intense. They go to the cloakroom to gather their muffs, which, if you're not familiar with it, they were things you put your hands in to keep them warm. Mm-hmm. They're all gone, and they usually were made of fur.
Yeah.
All the muffs are gone. The one sister's gone. She'd smuggled them out under her dress.
She took the muffs and rolled them onto her and slipped them onto her legs.
Under her dress.
Under her dress, as if they were a sock, and just a muff after the other, just slipped them onto her legs, and then walked out with them under her skirts.
While these fights are going on.
While they...
So, unfortunately, this is where they get one major run-in with the law. Dan Douglas of Sangerville Center had Wash indicated for stealing a saddle and bridle. Wash was forced to skip his bail and ran for California. No mention of what happened to all the muffs.
They're long gone.
Probably sold them. They were fur. Could have made them into something else, yeah.
I don't think they probably stole anything without a buyer up front.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, that's the way you do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Wash is gone. You'd think that'd be the end. He was the one who kind of took it over, right? Well, They keep going. They start raiding the nearby farms. They start stealing sheep and cows and horses, clothing. Local farmers are getting sick of this. They actually raid the Loomis' farm at one point, and they do find most of their stuff, but had to leave it behind because the Loomis brothers returned and chased them off. And then the Loomis brothers were like, oh, this is nice, burnt everything. Instead of even selling it, just got rid of it. Ugh. So Wash is gone for a bit, and rumors start to fly. Oh, boy. He's out in California trying his hand at the gold rush, right? He's out there. Nobody knows, except maybe his family, knows what he's doing out there. Rumors start to fly about what was going on with him, including that he got killed in a gunfight.
Oh, boy.
That's not what happened. He comes back, and things go... That's when he started going to Albany, when he came back. Okay, so that's the time he starts going to Albany, starts bribing officials there. Mm-hmm. They pretty much got Madison County in their pocket at this point. So they're doing everything to keep under control. And Flora is still controlling the gang through him. She's really the person that is making sure these boys are doing the stealing. And so far, I got to point out, if it hadn't been for her influence, I really think Wash, if it hadn't been for her, Wash could have been a really good lawyer. I think Grove could have been, excellent at breeding horses, but she wanted them to stay criminals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, how did she treat her daughter-in-laws? Not good. Not good at all.
She was kind of abusive to her daughter-in-laws.
Very abusive.
Yeah.
And one in particular, Wash begins to see this young woman named Hannah Wright, and his mother does not like her at all. And then at the same time, we meet the person who's going to become the thorn in the side to the Loomises, Filkins, who at this time was a blacksmith. He had a lot of dealings with the Loomises, being a blacksmith. He'd shod their horses. He talked to them quite a bit. He did he did have a lot of respect for George Loomis, the patriarch. He met Wash. In fact, a quote from Filkins is, "I first saw Wash Loomis at Laban Alby's hotel. Alby was a colored man. He pressed Wash for 25 cents. Wash borrowed the money from me. He promised to pay me back the next day, and he kept his word." So, from what I can understand, there was no animosity between Filkins and the Loomises until Filkins gets elected constable of Brookfield in Madison County.
How about that?
And then they start having problems.
That's when things fall apart.
Right. So Bill Loomis was arrested on charge of passing a counterfeit bill, but through some sleight of hand or what happened, Bill escaped. Wash was able to cover up the whole thing. There was nothing that they could prove that, this counterfeiting had been passed. Okay. Yeah. So that starts the thing with Filkins went in to do something about it, and the evidence disappeared, and
he got blocked. Yeah. No one was helping.
Yep.
No one would sign affidavits to prove that, we saw the Loomis gang, up to no good. And other authorities were no help either.
No.
Because, the Loomises had him in their pocket. So this is just the beginning of this guy's frustration with the Loomis gang.
Yep. Well, in 1857, the patriarch passes away. And that does have quite the effect on the gang. Flora, the matriarch, wants it run like how her husband ran it.
Right.
Wash has got bigger ideas. So there's already a conflict between him and his mother at this point.
Right.
He wants to go big.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to stay stealing the horses, stealing the sheep, fencing the stuff off. That's what she
garments, whatnot. But it wasn't just garments and horses and the likes. There was also firearms involved too.
Oh yeah.
Where a store of pistols was stolen from one of the local mercantiles, along with some other goods.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of charges there.
So a stranger called Russell Crumb said he had some cattle to sell. So Crumb shows this guy the steers and asks $160 for them. The stranger pays the money.
Mm-hmm.
Crumb takes the money to the bank and finds out the bills were counterfeit. So he goes to get his cows back, right?
Right.
And he finds the Loomis boys have them, and they're like, "Oh no, someone sold them to us for $155."
Yeah, that don't sound right.
Right. Well, he was able to get his oxen back, but technically the Loomises owned the oxen now. So that case never came to trial. And then they took the oxen back, and Crumb never got his cows or his money.
Was there not numerous indictments against the Loomis gang, and specifically against Wash, that never came to trial?
Oh, a lot of them. But the story about this one's interesting because the rumors were that it was that one sister, the one who was really, really involved in the crime. She was dressed up as a man, and she was the one who originally purchased the oxen.
Oh.
That's the rumors with that one. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, that did tick off a lot of people, but nobody was able to do anything.
Well, it's because the Loomises had already set up this gang with people who were neighbors who had favors done for them by the Loomises, who were silent. They basically bought the silence of their neighbors and the complacency of local officials, perhaps state officials too.
It was pretty big.
Bearing in Wash's activities down there in Albany. I mean, who knows how deep the criminality goes deeper than the 9 Mile Swamp itself.
Yes, exactly.
Which is interesting to me because there's an account after the Loomis gang had its heyday and everything, and there were rumors about treasure.
Oh, yeah.
9 Mile Swamp. And,
we'll have to go over all the rumors about that, too. Yeah, we definitely will.
That's for sure.
So, in November 1858, Filkins finally tries to make an attempt to arrest them, and shots are fired at Plum. So then Plum turns around and he accuses Filkins of attempted murder,
Right.
But nothing comes of that. But let's see. They tried. Yeah, they got a warrant. So in November 1858, Filkins tries to capture him. Shots are fired, and Plum turns around and accuses Filkins of attempted murder. And they actually obtain a warrant from Justice Marsh from Higginsville.
Okay.
They got deputized by that justice and went and arrested Filkins.
Oh, boy.
So they were deputized, and they went and arrested Filkins for assault, but the case was dropped. Filkins retaliated by charging Wash with assault and battery, and all the judge did was, another judge just fined Wash, fined Filkins, or he said find the leader, so I'm not sure which one got fined at this point. But Grove is indicted for passing counterfeit money, but he escapes punishment as well. Hannah, Wash's little girlfriend, that was horrible for me to say. Hannah Wright, in 1859, moves into the Loomis homestead. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then in 1861, the Civil War began. You'd think this would change things around.
Not really.
Not really.
No.
In the homestead, Rhoda was I keep saying Rhonda, and I just realized it's Rhoda. I'm sorry. Rhoda really didn't like Hannah. Didn't like her at all. She treated her like a servant.
Yeah.
She really abused her. And I'm sure Wash stepped in there a few times, but it was a really bad situation for Hannah. And it's believed because Hannah, she was seen as an influence on Wash, and that influence wasn't Mom. So really that's what it was. Well, Filkins, after dealing with just getting stonewalled and being accused of murder, attempted assault and everything himself, he goes over to Madison County and becomes a constable, Waterville. He's tired of it. He moves to Oneida. He's tired of Madison County protecting the Loomises, so he goes to the next county over. Well, Hannah Wright dies, and I think that's where we're going to leave it right now.
All right.
So, come back for part 2 next week.
Yep.
And we'll finish up and we'll talk about what happened to Hannah and how the fall of the gang finally happened. Mm-hmm. So I hope you enjoyed the start of the discussion of the Loomis gang.
Oh, yes. Thank you for listening to our Ghastly podcast.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Unearthly Upstate. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and on our webpage. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. Please like, share, and review on your favorite platform. Unearthly Upstate is an Animator Liar production. The show is produced by Mari and Matt Manette, with purring provided by Honey and Lloyd. Research and writing by Mari Manette. Music is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Unless otherwise stated in the episode, the places mentioned in the broadcast are not paid or contact us for any type of promotion. Please check out our webpage for credit and sources for the episode. Thank you.